All right. Hello and welcome to the show. In this episode, we are going to be talking about resistance. And this is probably one of the most important topics that you can really understand and will be one of the biggest things that really prevents you from really reaching your goals in recovery if you really don't start to notice and understand how to overcome resistance. So before we dive in, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Cotty, and I am the founder of Restored Minds and the creator of the AAA Response. And if you're looking for help and guidance on your journey to OCD and anxiety recovery, again, over at Restored Minds, we have several resources for you. And again, I think one of the best places to start is just our book. It will really give you a nice big overview of kind of the recovery process as well as the AAA response. And there's also, again, our 12-week program, and so we have several resources. So be sure to check that out. Also, if you're looking or if you would please help us out on the show by liking and subscribing, as well as leaving a review on iTunes or Spotify, it would just really help the algorithm of the show. So we would really appreciate if you would do that. Now, let's go ahead and dive into resistance. So resistance is it is a defense mechanism, right? It's this idea of like, I'm not supposed to have this feeling or this thought in my mind, and therefore we resist it. And when we resist it, what happens is we pile on safety behaviors or compulsions behind that resistance. So it's our initial resistance that really causes this entire loop to form. And a lot of times what we're talking about resistance, we're talking about, again, feelings in the body. We're talking about, even thoughts in the mind. And when we resist something, we start to get into battle with it. And a lot of times you won't really even notice that you're resisting, because resistance can look like a lot of different ways. In fact, I'll share some of the ways that resistance shows up in my life. And again, it's just something that I constantly am just becoming more and more aware of. So the simple way to think of resistance is like, imagine you're getting a hug from someone. Imagine two scenarios. Number one, you're hugging either your spouse or your parents or your sibling or your, best friend, right? You're really giving them a hug, right? And imagine how that hug feels. Just simple thought exercise right now, right? Like, just really imagine yourself giving someone a hug that you want to hug and that wants to hug you. And there's this embrace. In the embrace, notice there's not going to be any tension or tightness in the body. You're going to be loose. You're going to be warm. You're going to be open. You're going to embrace them. Right. Now imagine in that's scenario one. Now imagine in scenario two, this person that you don't really like, or, maybe it's a little bit of a creepy person, kind of stalkerish kind of person, wants to give you a hug. Right. And let's say they hug you and you actually like give them a hug unwillingly, but you're resistant, you tighten up, right? I mean, most of us had some kind of experience where someone, embraced us and we didn't really want to do it. And we kind of, okay, and they embraced us and there's kind of a tightness, you hold tense, right? That's resistance. That's what it is right there. It is our resistance that creates all this tension in the body, right? And so I had an experience the other day where I kind of had like this realization, right? And then really kind of defining the idea of stress and tension. And it wasn't necessarily my ideas, but it just kind of became very clear to me, right? Like, stress is when we are resisting what's going on in life, right? That's what creates stress, right? We want life to be a different way. And tension is often when we are resisting feelings in the body. That's what creates tension in the body. And so when we're talking about like your body feeling very tense, what that's an indication of is a lot of resistance in there, right? And a lot of times what we're resisting is very just basic emotions: fear, anger, guilt, shame, sadness, right? Depression, apathy, whatever you want to call it. and Dr. Hawkins talks about like kind of that lower quarter of his scale in letting go. And so when you resist these feelings, and Carl Jung famously said, right, what you resist persists, right? So when you resist feelings, what you're doing is you're tensing up to their presence, right? And then what happens is, because you tense up, we form these parts of us that then attempt to resolve the feeling. When really all that ever really needs to happen is that we need to drop our resistance and allow the feeling to surface in our body, the tension to surface in our body, the tightness, the whatever it is we're feeling, to just be there, to be there. The reason we get in loops is because we have this initial resistance to this feeling, whether it's onslaught of panic, fear, uncertainty, doubt. I mean, you can name it, right? I mean, all the different things, the intrusive thought, which again is generally, the intrusive thought is actually just a mind interpretation of the feeling of fear, right? Usually of high levels of fear and worry in the body. And when you understand that resistance is the problem, what most of us are doing is we're resisting, and then we're going and trying to put out the feelings. So one of the ways, so there's all sorts of ways that we do this, right? And it kind of falls into the main categories, right? We avoid, we check, we reassure, we control. And this can show up in a variety of ways. So one of the ways that it shows up for me, right, if I'm just, kind of just sharing transparently, is when I get heavy fear or anxiety in the body, I'll immediately run to like attempting to figure it out or solve it, right? So I'll read, like I'll just start reading, compulsively, or I'll, watch YouTube videos of people teaching, and I'll start studying the techniques, or maybe I'll go meditate and notice. And this is why when it comes to safety behaviors and compulsions, it's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Like so many people are like, I need help identifying my safety behaviors and my compulsions. And, I hear these questions a lot. And the problem is anything can be a safety behavior, even good things, right? Listening to church sermons, or, spiritual music, doing your meditations, all like, if you are doing this with the intention of, I need to eliminate this feeling, you're already operating from resistance. Therefore, it is a safety behavior. Like, so important that you understand that, because if you don't get that, then you'll sit there and say, well, I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing all the right things, Matt. It's not working for me. I'm sitting meditating, an hour in the morning and 30 minutes at night, still feel anxious. And notice that statement, right? Like, notice if you operate in statements like that, like, I'm doing this and I still feel this. What does that indicate? I don't want to feel this feeling. I'm resisting it. And I'm doing all these things to try to get rid of it, and it's not working. Therein lies the problem right there. This is why I'm saying, like, resistance is the most important hurdle and obstacle that you will overcome on this journey. Because when you learn to drop resistance first, and this is a big part of what we teach in the 12-week program in Taking Back Control, is the first thing that you need to do with emotions is drop your resistance to the experience. And think about it like that. A lot of that is bodily. If you're tightening up and, like, tensing up, and your shoulders are all tight, and, your neck is tight and your back is tight, right? Like, that's why, when you overlap things like TMS and the mind, what used to be called the mind body syndrome, or tension mitosis syndrome, or now it's called PPD. It doesn't matter what it's called, right? But this is what's so interesting about, like, Sorno's work in the 80s, where, he correlated back pain to anger, and really it's not even just anger, it's just really emotion in the body. And he had an amazing cure rate, I should say. Yeah, I should separate those words. But he had this like crazy healing, rate in his practice, where all he did was focus on emotion. Because, essentially you think about it, like, and this is what a lot of the stuff we do, the chiropractic work, the massage work, all this stuff. I mean, it's relieving tension in the body. Well, tension, again, is our resisting of emotion. And when we can start to change our relationship with emotion and realize it's just emotion, it's not even us, right? And that's where we're talking about higher levels of consciousness. Not going to go into that on this particular episode. But when you really begin to understand that resistance itself is the problem, like that's the first domino in this trickle effect. And this is why what a lot of people do is they are resisting, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to bounce from program to 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 program. And then none of these work. So I must be this terrible case. And it's like, no, not at all. That's not true at all. The reason that this stuff isn't working, it is because you're resisting and you're trying to plug in a source here to get what you want, as opposed to what the program is actually trying to help you do, which is, again, to actually feel feelings in the body, to actually sit with your body and be with yourself. Like, most people can't be with themselves. I shouldn't say can't, won't be with themselves. Everyone can, but they won't. Like, the idea, sometimes, like, the most anxiety provoking scenario I can present to someone is like, what if I just had you sit in this room by yourself for 3 hours? You're not allowed to watch TV, you're not allowed to distract yourself, listen to anything. You just have to sit and be with yourself. That's a very challenging thing for a lot of people, especially with how fast people operate now. When they're just, on social media all day, and, just there's not a moment of silence. And what is that? It's a distraction, right? Like, think of the industries that we invest in to distract us. The Netflix, streaming, and there's nothing bad about any of these industries, by the way, but just think about how much money we invest in them, right? Like, we binge watch the streaming services. Like, I'm going to watch 3 hours straight, right? Or all the podcast platforms, right? I mean, the reality is you could be using this podcast or this show as a distraction, as a form of something you're doing to cope with your resistance. And that's why there's some conflict with, like, I mean, I want to produce this stuff to help, right? But I know it can be used compulsively. And there's a, catch-22 to it, right? And this is why noticing your resistance and then what you do is your biggest thing to your success on this journey to recovery. Is like, okay, I'm getting resistant, and what do I feel compelled to do? I want to go smoke. I want to go drink. I want to go, out with my friends. I want to, just turn on the TV. I want to start listening to a podcast and walking and working and doing all this stuff. And I'm going to compulsively work out. I'm going to compulsively meditate, right? I mean, like, again, I'm going to go in and meditate. I'm going to focus on it so I can get rid of these feelings. Notice that the first domino is the resistance. And if you really get what I'm saying here, this could change the course of your recovery. I really, really believe that, because our ability to sit with our own body and actually, and because the feelings will release when you feel them. That's the weird thing about them. I don't kind of know where they go, right? I don't understand that part. But if you really sit with feelings, and this is the whole premise of letting go, this is the premise of the Sedona method, this is the premise of, the body focused stuff that Dr. Gay Hendricks and I believe his wife, Catherine Hendricks, there's so much stuff to this, but this is the idea, is how do I let go of my resistance and actually feel what's going on? That's the first thing, though, is I need to let go of my resistance in order to allow the feeling. If I'm resisting and I'm trying to allow the feeling, that's a paradox. It doesn't happen. How can you allow something that you're resisting? Like, that's you resisting a hug from someone and saying, I'm allowing them to hug me. No, you're not. It's not the same. Think of the hug analogy. It's very simple, right? Think of what it means to hug someone you really want. That's a dropping of resistance. And how can we start doing that with our uncomfortable feelings? So hopefully this was helpful and shine some kind of insight on resistance, because resistance by itself is your biggest hurdle. And once we can learn to first notice when it happens and then overcome it, that really allows and facilitates the recovery process in a much faster and healthier fashion than resisting the whole time and trying to implement all these different things that you've been implementing, because you're doing it from the wrong spirit in the first place. So hope that was helpful. And with that said, again, please help us out by liking and subscribing. And then we'll see you on the next episode as we continue on this journey together. So have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Hey there, hope you enjoyed that recent video. We really would appreciate your support real quick if you could like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're looking for help with OCD and anxiety, please check out the links below or visit restoredminds.com, as we'd be happy to help you on your journey. Thanks so much.